Hi, I'm Coretta Wilson, and welcome to the premiere episode of Insight with Superintendent Heath Morrison. The dictionary describes the word insight as the power, act, or result of seeing into a situation. When you think of the role the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system plays in the success of our community, a little insight goes a long way. But just as important as receiving insight is receiving it from a reliable source, and that is the focus of this show. We'll cover the issues that affect students, parents, CMS staff, and the community, and get some insight from Dr. Heath Morrison, Superintendent of CMS. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you with us. We are going to talk today about the goals that you have set. You have 8 strategic goals. We're only going to get to about 4 of them today because we want to get the details of them. So the first goal that we have is accelerate academic achievement for every child and close achievement gaps so every child graduates from CMS college or career ready. Tell us what that means to you.
Well, first of all, I'm excited about the opportunity to have this show. When people ask, what's important about this show, I think it's just another ongoing commitment that we're making in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools to outreach to our community, to communicate every way we can, and to get information out in every conceivable way as quickly as possible. And so I'm excited. I know there are going to be tough questions. I look forward to this. I actually don't know the tough questions. I just know you're going to make them tough, and I welcome that.
Good.
So as far as goal 1, when people ask about the 8 goals that we put forward and our plan, the way forward, what I remind everybody is that these 8 goals came after an intensive period of listening to our community. I didn't come in as new superintendent Charlotte-Mecklenburg with a plan. I came in with an entry plan to say I was going to go listen, learn, find out what we're doing well and what we could do better. And so after visiting every school, having a plethora of town hall meetings, some with just employees, some with our entire community, meeting with civic leaders, business leaders, faith-based leaders, we came to that these 8 goals were the 8 goals that would move our school district forward. I get asked a lot which one's the most important, and I don't think that there's one that's more important than others. They're all interdependent, but if you had to lift up one, it would certainly be goal 1. To ensure academic success for every single student, and every means every student. It means that when we have a student who's behind, we have to catch them up and get them on that trajectory that's going to get them college and career ready. When we have a student who comes to us ahead, we've got to keep them ahead. It's a commitment to every single student and to show how intentional we are about that.
And you mentioned that, and I've read somewhere personalized learning. Is that where that comes in to meet students kind of where they are, if they're higher level or lower level?
Absolutely. When we talk about gaps, there are gaps between where a student is because they are outperforming their peers. What we don't want to do is to keep them, to pull them back or to keep them where they are. If they're ahead, we want to keep them ahead. Certainly there are students who start off on the first day of kindergarten in our public education system and they're already behind. So a personalized learning environment means simply that with 143,866 students, we have to have a personalized approach to learning for each of those students. We have to figure out how they learn, what vehicles they learn best with, what are methodologies that might work better for one student than another. I compare it like going to a doctor. You might go in with a hurt elbow, I might go in with a hurt elbow. You might be playing too much tennis and you need rest. I might need major surgery. Whatever it is that we both need to make our elbows better, we want a doctor to provide. We don't want the same treatment of medicine. And so we have to have a differentiated approach for every student, and we have to take pride in doing that.
Are there any options out there right now for the high achievers and to catch up the low achievers, keep the high achievers moving? What can they choose?
Well, we have a variety of magnet programs, accelerated programs. We have talent development programs at the elementary level. So we have a lot of programs in place, but one of our task forces that we've created is specifically around gifted and talented students. And so what is it that we need to make sure that as a school district we're meeting their needs? How can we incorporate more academic rigorous opportunities for all students at all levels of our schools? How do we create different new exciting programs, academy signature programs, additional magnet programs? And so there's a lot we're doing, but there's a lot more that we can do.
Are these programs, I'll ask, are they working? Because I know in the magnet schools, a lot of times transportation can be an issue. So where there is a magnet program where a student wants to attend, for whatever reason, they can't get there by bus or by car because perhaps their parents work. So we have obviously some programs out there, some choices. How do we get the student to those choices?
Well, we do provide transportation. The problem is that based on where a particular program might be, it might be particularly challenging to get there. So you really want your child on a bus for an hour to an hour and 15 minutes a day to get to one of these programs. So part of what we're doing right now is to look at where are programs that clearly people are opting in? They really like that program. The Moorhead STEM Academy is one.
Okay.
I was just there 2 weeks ago. Great things are happening at that school. We have a waiting list of over 700 students. And so can we take that program and replicate it across our district so we can cut down on transportation being a barrier, offer it in more locations, actually save some money by not having to transport students as much. And so I just think that's where we can be really creative and effective and efficient and still offer a great program that clearly our parents are asking for their children.
Do you see that those particular programs are meeting the goals and the needs of the students and the parents? Are there any fixes for those?
Well, I think part of what I want to see Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools do is be a continuous improvement organization. What that means is we have to be very clear about how we're measuring our success.
Right.
And that means every program, every school, we've got to be very clear. And then we have to be accountable for that. And so we have to share, this is how we're going to measure success. We have to make sure that we have mechanisms to do that. And then we can't be afraid of sharing the data when it's not good. What people want to see is, okay, the program didn't work the way you thought it was going to. Do you need to tweak it? Do you need to replace it totally? What's the plan to do that? But when it's working really well, we also have to share those successes as well. So I'm big into measures, I'm big into accountability, and I'm big into transparency to make sure that we're constantly sharing with our public, our taxpayers, our community, our parents, that we're delivering on the promises that we're making.
When you say college and career ready, making students, all students, college or career, are we giving them a choice of college or giving them the choice of college and move on to a career after high school? I know when I went to school a million years ago, there was VOCAT, where you could take a vocational class and not go to college. Are we moving toward those options, or what do we mean? What do you mean by college and career?
Well, I think the entire country is having this conversation, college or career ready. I like to say college and career ready, and I use the and very intentionally. The reality of the workforce development needs of the future is this, that if you have a job today that is easily duplicable, it's going to be replaced by technology or by outsourcing. And so we're going to have to make sure that we are preparing all students for the workforce development needs of the future. That means that the vast majority of our students are going to, all of our students are going to need a high school diploma. Many will go on and immediately go into college. Many of our students won't, but we want them to be able to go into a high skilled career. And the reality is changing their jobs 10 or 12 times, as we know they're going to have to do, then that means that many of them will have to go back in for additional career training. So we need to look at what are the skills. We know we need to stress creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship. We need to stress critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration. These are the skills that are going to hold up whether we're trying to prepare you for college and or career. And that's what we have to make sure we're doing with all students.
Definitely a foundation.
Absolutely a foundation.
Well, boy, that's a lot for goal one.
Yeah.
Almost taking a breath. Okay, our other goal, our second goal is ensure an effective teacher in every class is led by an effective principal in every school, served by quality support staff. What do we mean by all of that?
So simply put, if the goal is to have academic success for every child, every student, every day for a better tomorrow is what we're saying in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, then the best lever that we have for that, the most important way to have that happen is to have an effective teacher in every classroom. The research is really clear. You put an effective teacher in a classroom, you narrow achievement gaps, you start to close achievement gaps, you accelerate the learning for all students. A great teacher works miracles every day. And so what we have to do is to make sure that we have a framework for teaching and learning. We have to make sure we have a professional growth system. There's this conversation across the country right now about evaluations, and for many of our teachers, and I understand it, it's, you know, it feels like a gotcha. You're trying to show that I'm not doing a good job. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is that we create a professional growth system that clearly articulates the talent that we're trying to bring into the classroom, how we're going to onboard that talent, how we're going to welcome teachers into our profession, how we're going to help build their capacity, how we're going to have structures for quality professional development and increase capacity, create career ladders so that great teachers don't feel like they have to leave the classroom for professional growth. And yes, when there is a teacher who is not performing, that we have systems to help them get better. And ultimately, if they can improve, then yes, we have to do what's in the best interest of a student and separate from that teacher. But I want that to be after we have a commitment to improve the quality of our teachers, not a gotcha system.
When we think of the effective teacher, what is that? And no longer does it seem like a bachelor's degree makes you an effective teacher in the classroom. It goes so far beyond that. When you see one, how do you know?
You know, I think what I've always said about teaching, and I don't watch a whole lot of ice skating, but I compare it to how you evaluate an ice skater. There's an art and there's a technical aspect to it. You can go into a classroom and you can say the teacher was well planned, they have an objective on the board, they're demonstrating recursiveness, they're doing good questioning, they're doing good follow-up, they're doing all the technical things, and that's hugely important. But there's just an art to great teaching. You see the passion they have. They know their subject, and they care about their subject, but they know their kids even better, and they're really passionate about their children. And so great teachers have grit, determination. They don't ever give up on students. There's just an art to it. And so great teachers have both. They have the technical aspect, and they have the art of it. And so we have to recognize that. We have to celebrate it. You know, our teachers in our country and here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, they really are heroes and sheroes, and we need to celebrate them in our community and thank them for what they're doing. Give them every opportunity to continue to get better. Great teachers constantly want to get better, and so we have to do a good job with professional growth and professional development.
Is it about relationships?
It's always about relationships. We're in a people business, so it's a relationship between the teacher and the student, between the teacher and the administrator and the district. It is absolutely about relationships, and so we need to make sure that we've got positive relationships in our schools, relationships where we have true professional learning communities. Teaching can be one of the most isolated jobs that are out there. So how do we get teachers to work together, to share together, to learn from each other? It's great to bring some expert in from outside of the district, but most of the expertise that really will help our teachers get better is right here in our school district. We just have to be able to recognize it and scale it across our district.
Okay, that's goal 1 and goal 2.
Yeah.
Got a lot more to cover.
Got 6 more.
Yes, we do. The premiere episode of Insight with Superintendent Heath Morrison continues after the break. And later on, we'll ask the superintendent about school safety, pay for performance, and other hot topics in CMS. So stay tuned. And welcome back to Insight. CMS Superintendent Heath Morrison. He came, he listened, he learned, and he put that information into a plan to lead the school district. We continue our look at the strategic goals by getting some insight on goal number 3. Cultivate innovative partnerships with parents, caregivers, and the community to provide a sustainable system of support for every child. I must say, this sounds like the village.
It is. It is that proverb that it takes an entire village to educate a child. So it's built around an assumption and a bias, and that bias is that we have to recognize that the first teachers of our children are their parents.
Yes.
And so we have to work better, more collaboratively with our parents. We have to make sure that we are helping them with the advocacy of their child's needs. And we just have to make sure that there's an amazing relationship. I've said this often. I've never seen a caring parent working with a caring teacher that has ever failed to educate a child. And so building those relationships gets back to your previous comment about relationships, helping us work better with our parents more proactively in different innovative ways. That's a major part of goal 3.
What do parents need to do? Because most parents, all parents I should say, want the best for their children.
Yes.
But sometimes they may or may not know how to go about doing it, especially in education because it's constantly changing. What can they do to get in there and really help their kid?
Well, I think every parent wants their child to be successful. What I've often said is if you think about it as a game, many parents know all the rules of the game and they know how to work the system for the advantage of their child. I get that, I understand that, and their children do very well. Some parents know some parts of the game, and so their children tend to graduate, but are they really college and career ready? And then many of our parents don't even know that there's this game being played, and so they send their child to school every day, but they disengage. And so we have to reach out to every parent. We have to make sure that we're constantly keeping our parents informed. You might think you know every aspect about public education, but if you don't know today what's happening with Common Core, if you don't understand how technology is impacting your child's education, if we're not doing a good job letting you know how the changing demands of the workforce and college admissions. So there's always more that we can do to outreach to our parents, to inform our parents, but help our parents advocate, to feel like they've got an important voice, not to bring them in for a parent-teacher association meeting and ask them.
That's not the time you want to see them.
Yeah, but you know, we tend to ask, do you want cupcakes or cookies at your school for Teacher Appreciation Week? We need to be asking for their input in terms of important topics at the school. We need to listen, we need to partner, we need to collaborate, and so that's really a major part of Goal 3, in addition to reaching out to new innovative partnerships partnerships with businesses, with faith-based community, with higher education, all things that can really benefit our students.
And I know there's a lot out there that CMS puts out for parents. What are some of the questions they should be asking, or who can they contact? Where can they get some of this information? If they're like, okay, I see this, I want to do something. Right. Where do they go?
Well, I think, you know, it's always best to start off with your child's teacher. At the end of the day, I think what most parents, first of all, they care, are we keeping their child safe? That's always the #1 concern. But then it's, how's my child doing? We tend to make it really complicated. A parent asks, is my child doing well in school? Meaning, are they reading at the level that they should? Are they writing at the level? Are they doing math? And we tend to start talking about AYP and Safe Harbor and confidence intervals and EOGs
all
and
the acronyms.
And people just gloss over. So how do we really you know, help our parents understand where their child is, where they need more additional support? How do we work together to provide that? And then really, how do we accelerate the progress of every child? I think that's what our parents want to hear from us. We have to figure out how to better deliver that message and make it easier on our teachers, and not expect that all communications are going to come from our teachers. As a district, we need to do a better job.
Okay. What can the community do? Or what are we expecting them to do? Well,
what I love about the Charlotte-Mecklenburg community is the community wants to do a lot. I never go to any public event where there's not people who give me their business card and say, I want to help. We've seen with our 22 task forces that we've created to support these 8 goals. There's you know, just an incredible number of people who are volunteering their time, their talents, their best ideas and thinking to help us get better. And so what we have to do is to really do a good job of explaining, these are where we have needs. This is where you can plug into what we need. Sometimes people have something they want to offer that really isn't going to be helpful. So we have to be very clear about what we need, reach out to our community who wants to help, engage them in very productive ways, and then really bring a lot of resources, human resources, to the education of our children.
What's been the response, you say, from the community? What is it that they are trying to do? Anything specific?
Oh, everything. I was at a program today that stresses character education through golf. And so we've got some of the major businesses in Charlotte-Mecklenburg helping to introduce students to the game of golf. Not because golf in and of itself is an important thing that we want to introduce to our students, but the character education, stressing good work and camaraderie. So, you know, what we've had offers of everything from resources to people wanting to come in and work directly with our students. I was just left a meeting where we've got a major business coming in that's going to deal with the arts and entertainment field. That's of high interest to our students, so they want to work with us to create new magnet programs, new academic programs that are rigorous and enrichment, maybe some extended learning opportunities during the summer. So, you know, we're only stifled in this community by our creativity and our imagination. I have found that when we put a big ask out there, this community has responded. So we have to ask for the right things, be very specific, and be willing to work collaboratively with our community. Why would we not want to do that?
And as parents, caregivers, and the community help out, you speak about character, because that seems to be it's one of the primary things that teachers hope that children will come to school with: good character, then the learning. Would you agree with that, or does it work together?
You know, I think it's the chicken and the egg. I think, you know, you wish every student started kindergarten, you know, ready to learn, that they already had, you know, a sufficient number of sight words, and that they came in, you know, ready to learn in a certain way. But, you know, our children come in at very different levels with different, you know, backgrounds. And so what our obligation, I've always felt as a teacher, as a principal, now superintendent, we have to meet our students where they are and take them to where they need to be. And so that's what gets back to the personalized learning environment. We have to meet each child's needs, accelerate the things that they're doing well, find the things that they could do better, and create those individual plans. And so I think certainly the character of a child, you know, I think character, I've always defined it as, what do you do when you don't think people are looking? And so, you know, how do we help our young people think about character? Not in a way that, you know, defines them in terms of a certain stereotype, but just, you know, part of what we should do in public education is to produce good citizens. And so clearly define what that means and embed that in our academic programs.
Lead by example.
Absolutely.
Okay. That was goal 3. We'll look at strategic goal 4. Nurture a culture of high engagement, customer service, and cultural competency. What is that all about? The target audience, I guess, for that.
Yeah, you know, I think really it's about the culture of our schools, and so that means everything from our schools safe places. Certainly we've seen with horrific events in our country, if students are afraid to come to school, then it's hard for them to learn at the levels they need to. So what do we need to do to keep our students physically safe, socially and emotionally safe, to really get them in a conducive way for teaching and learning to occur? It's also about a culture of respect amongst our employees. You know, if our teachers are feeling disrespected, if our administrators feel like they have limited voice in the direction of school district, if we have morale or engagement issues amongst our workforce, then any business will tell you that's going to hurt productivity. So,
is there a disconnect that you have found between staff and the downtown, uptown office?
I think there's been some of that. When I've come in and I've had conversations with hundreds of teachers, they've talked about, I think it's a tough time right now across our country. There's been a lot of research to show that teacher morale across the country is the lowest it's been in 20 years. You know, very few pay upgrades over the last couple of years, major cuts, more students in classes. You know, the teaching profession somewhat being criticized by many, many different fronts.
So you can understand the low morale.
I always say I'm a teacher on special assignment, so I understand that. So what I want to make sure that as a district, that we're trying to lift up the teaching profession, that everything we do is very intentional about helping our teachers doing the important work that they do, and that where there's a disconnect where our teachers feel like we're not listening, then how do we listen better and respond to them? And so that's why we're doing more surveying than we've ever done. We're having town halls and community meetings, and every time we're trying to do some big initiative, we're asking for teacher and principal and support staff input, because that will help us ultimately do a better job.
So that's all a part of the customer service. And of course, the students, the parents are all
customer service to our students, customer service to our parents, and customer service to our schools. I say central office exists to support schools. And so it's incumbent for everybody who wears a CMS ID badge to be able to say, I support teaching and learning by. And whether you work as a bus driver, whether you work as a secretary, I say, I'm support staff. We have teachers, we have principals, and everybody else is support staff. I'm support staff. And so I have to be able to say I'm supporting quality teaching and learning.
Are you reaching that goal? How's that coming along?
Well, you know, I think it's still being fine. What I always say about trying to improve morale and engagement is that work's never done. I think, you know, what you try to do is create a culture where that's the expectation, where teachers and principals and support staff feel like they have a voice in the direction of the organization, that they have a way to articulate their challenges so that we can work collaboratively together. But that work's never done. And the minute you think it's done, like, oh, we solved that, you're really being disillusioned, or you're not being honest. And that's something, people can say a lot of things about me, but, you know, saying I'm not honest is one that usually doesn't stick. I never say, let me be honest. I'm always honest. Sometimes, you know, I get myself in trouble, but I'd rather be getting in trouble for being truthful than not.
So a building of trust, both ways.
Yeah, and trust is about relationships, and it's easily broken. So if you deceive, if you are unintentional about trying to be transparent, then you cause problems with trust. And so I certainly think coming into the school district, there have been some issues of trust lifted up by the community, by parents, by some of our workforce. So we have to be responsive, and we have to own the things that are legitimate, the things that are misconceptions. We have a responsibility to say that's not accurate, and let's explain to you why that is. But it's about being good listeners. I think Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yeah, and we will clarify everything right on the show.
Oh, absolutely. How many hours do we have?
All day. When we come back, we'll shift our conversation to some of the upcoming issues facing our school district, issues that affect students, teachers, parents, and the community in whole. Get more insight right after the break. Well, it's a good thing to be informed about issues as they happen, but I like to get the scoop on things that are in the works, and that is where we will turn our attention right now. One of those hot topics, pay for performance.
Right.
What is that?
Well, across the country, we're seeing that a lot of folks are coming forward and saying, are we compensating teachers and principals in an appropriate way? Traditionally, the longer you've taught and the more educational attainment you have, the more money that you can make as an educator. There's not a lot of research to show that those things actually drive higher student achievement. So there's a lot of initiatives across the country about does pay for performance. In other words, identifying those administrators, those teachers who are producing the highest student achievement and compensating that more. Will that help drive increased student achievement? Now, truth be told, there's very little research that pay for performance systems have increased student achievement either. But what I do know is this, and that is that last year in the legislative session, our state legislature put out a bill that gave every school district an opportunity to weigh in by March 1st of this year on a proposed pay performance system for the state.
So where are we with that?
Well, so what I did was I went out to our teacher associations, I went out to groups of individuals that represent teachers and principals, and I said, I believe that we as a district should come forward and at least give input and recommendation to our state legislature rather than sitting on the sideline. And do you agree? And to their credit, they said yes. And so we formed a work team that's got over 40 individuals, teachers, administrators. They've been working very diligently with a national firm. We've been surveying our teachers and our principals. We've been going out having meetings with our teachers and principals to get input, but that's all so that by March 1st we could give a Charlotte-Mecklenburg response to this state, the state legislature. I don't want to give a Heath Morrison plan. I don't want to give a district office plan. I want to give a plan that really our teachers and our principals have a voice in.
So pay for performance. Help me clarify and help everyone understand this. If the teacher's in the classroom with their students, and that teacher rather, manages to get their students on grade level, they get a 3 or a 4 or whatever is expected for that student to get, then the teacher could get some type of bonus or extra pay. If the teacher does not meet those goals, there's no money for you.
Well, I think there's a base salary to begin with, but then the idea is what would you want to put in place that would incentivize somebody to work at an even higher level. It's you know, private business that you incentivize that way if you hit certain performance marks. So, for example, if the entire school hits a certain performance mark, then maybe everybody would be eligible for that performance. If there's individual data that shows that a teacher or principal have driven higher student achievement results, then they might be eligible for additional money. You could give additional compensation for teachers who teach a hard-to-staff subject or at a hard-to-staff school. You can certainly give additional compensation to teachers who take on leadership roles. And so there's a lot of different ways that pay for performance can work. There's not one model. And so that's why I think it's important for us to work together collaboratively in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Our teachers, our principals, all working together to come up with a system that potentially could work here. Have you weighed in one way or the other, or are you waiting for the numbers and the data to come Our work team is currently working on that March 1st deadline, which we have to get our proposed plan to the state. So we'll give a chance to give our input. And then we have one of the 22 task forces to support our 8 goals. So we're broadening the great work that's being done currently by our teachers and principals on that work team to become a full CMS Way Forward task force. And so we'll have some business leaders, we'll have some community members join that initiative, and then broaden the conversation around this topic. Big topic. We're going to table that, and we're going to come back to that probably after March 1st, definitely. Sure. School safety. In wake of the national tragedy that happened recently with the school shooting, how are we making our children, everyone's talked about the adults and the teachers and the administrators, how are we making our students feel safe? Well, I don't want to not come back to making our teachers feel safe as well. I think we need to remember that that the horrific thing that happened in Newtown, Connecticut, some amazing teachers and administrators lost their lives, and they lost their lives trying to defend their children. It's so tragic, and so what has to happen every time one of these tragedies occurs in a school anywhere across the country, we look at our school safety plans, school by school across our district. And so what we're doing right now in CMS is looking at 3 primary areas, because at the end of the day, the most important sacred obligation we have is the safety of our children. As a parent myself, before I care about the math, science, or social studies my child learn, I want to make sure that the school do everything it could to keep my child safe. So we're looking at our processes and systems. We're looking at our crisis plans. We're looking at all the plans that we have in the advent that there's some safety issue occurs at a school. Are we doing everything we can? Did we learn anything from Newtown that we need to implement here in CMS? We're looking at our facilities, and so we're working with our county colleagues around looking at our facility needs. Do we need to create more single point of entry access? Do we want to put more cameras in our schools? Do we want to use some strategic use of fencing at some of our more open campuses? So we're looking at some facility issues. And then we're also examining, is there a desire to put more SROs, or school resource officers, into our schools? We've got some great SROs right now, but we don't have one at every campus across our school district. So do we need to perhaps consider that? So we're looking at those 3 areas: process systems, facilities, and increased personnel. Arming teachers. You know, I have an issue with that. I have had very few teachers or principals say they're in favor of that. I think this work that we ask teachers to do is hard enough, challenging enough, that asking them to also take that type of responsibility for student safety is not something that most educators welcome, and it's certainly something I'm not advocating as superintendent. Okay. And I know that you've had a plan. There's always been a school safety plan in place. And when, like you said, when things like this happen, you have to reevaluate.
the new world that we appear to be living in.
Absolutely.
Lastly, what is cultural competency and we touched on it briefly. What is it? Why do we need it? And where do we go with it?
You know, cultural competency really gets back to this idea about being about every child. It is where do you know, we get our students in terms of where are they and where do we want them to be. Our students come to us on all different starting points on this journey of going from elementary, middle to high school to college and career readiness. So how do we meet each child's unique needs and get them to where they need to be? So cultural competency simply means that we can't, probably when you started teaching to myself, we were welcomed into training that was you know, diversity training, and usually it was being colorblind. Well, if you walk into a classroom and you have a room full of students of color, and you say, well, I don't notice that. That's really silly. Of course you're going to notice that. It doesn't make you a racist, doesn't make that you're going to discriminate, but you notice it. So what we're looking at is how do we ensure in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools that every classroom, every school, and our school district is culturally proficient, that we're respectful of the differences our students come to us with, that we don't look at those differences based on race, gender, ethnicity, different cultures or religious beliefs. We don't look at those differences as deficits, and that we really work to meet the unique needs of every single child.
Now, in recent communications,
what's that?
Recent communications about race in CMS, it's been called the white privilege. Are we looking at students with the white privilege eye? How do we address that? Are we racist in CMS? Are the teachers racist?
No, we have phenomenal teachers in CMS. We have teachers that every day are working hard to make a difference for all of our students. But in CMS, like every school district across the country, we have achievement gaps. And so what we have to do is to try to do everything we can to close those achievement gaps, raising the bar, so that every student can go over that raised bar. You can close achievement gaps by lowering the bar. We don't want to do that. And so what we have to do in terms of being culturally respectful and proficient is not to try to label any teacher, but to look at quality professional development. At the end of the day, I've always believed that cultural competency training, good diversity training, is good quality instructional practice. What do I need to do to meet the unique needs of my student? How can we bring teams of teachers together to look at data disaggregated by race, which we've been having to do ever since No Child Left Behind came along, and have conversations where we can put race on the table, not in a way that's going to get people angry or frustrated, but that we can have a framework for having those very difficult conversations. Many individuals and many organizations take a pass at that type of conversation. I don't believe that we can take a pass on those kind of conversations if our motto is to be about every child every day for a better tomorrow. And
when we look at the achievement gap, I'll go back to that. Is it true or not, and do correct me if I'm wrong, that it's the non-white students who are a little bit lower? Is that what maybe?
I think that's kind of a narrow definition of achievement gaps. We have achievement gaps based on gender. We have achievement gaps based on race. We have achievement gaps based on students who speak English as a second language. We have achievement gaps for students who come with IEPs. There's all sorts of gaps. And so we have to look at those gaps.
And the public needs to know that, because I think it goes to the black-white thing when we hear the gap.
Well, you know, and I think that's where, you know, we're trying to be very thoughtful about this. We're trying to think about a plan that really meets unique needs of Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, that really gives every single one of our students an amazing advantage to move on in our educational system, and that we as a school district can say everything that we can do to close those achievement gaps, we're doing here in CMS.
Okay. A lot of work to be done. Very big job.
Well, it does take a village, right?
It does, and I appreciate your time. We've learned a lot. Thank you so much for joining us for this first of many, many discussions about the issues in CMS that matter to you and, of course, to your family. We will see you the next time on Insight.